Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today we'll be taking a look at the pulp Cthulhu adventure, The Curse of Blackteeth Keetes. Written by Perry Grosshans and self-published in 2021 under the Miskatonic Repository Program. The adventure is 26 pages, but once you take out all the maps and the handouts, it really only comes to 14 pages and is easily playable in a single session. A few months back I did a video covering just different suggestions and my own preferences for writing adventure modules, and in it I talked about adding things like Game Master note side boxes, a timeline of events, separate Game Master and player maps, a cover disclaimer saying what books are required in order to play it, and a lot of useful stuff like that. And I am happy to say that Grosshans nailed just about every one of those suggestions. I am very impressed with the thoroughness of this adventure. The scenario is set in 1933 Massachusetts, and while playable using regular 7th edition Call of Cthulhu rules, it is strongly recommended that you just go ahead and use this with the Pulp Cthulhu mod. Also, the date and location can easily be changed to match your campaign. They don't have to be 1933 Massachusetts if that doesn't work out for you. So as long as it's somewhere coastal, it could be anywhere in the world, and the time period could be changed to, Cthulhu by Gaslight or 1920s, or you could even do this one with modern day. The scenario involves a call for help from an old friend, a mysterious lost island, a lot of combat potential here, a new and minor elder god, and a Goonies-style pirate treasure hunt. Oh, he is not kidding there. We made off like kings on pirate gold with this adventure. We have battled the mythos for years, and more often than not, we end up spending more money than we make on our adventures, but not on this one. Well, that's because I made some changes to it. So while the original adventure did have pirate treasure, I decided to go bigger with it. Oh. Well, what about the part where one of us got sucked into a parallel dimension that was exactly like the Upside Down from Stranger Things? Well, that is totally in there. And that is what we're going to talk about today. My thoughts, my suggestions, and my criticisms as a game master who has successfully run this adventure. But before we go any further, I must warn you that there will be spoilers. So any players in the audience, please stop here. But send your game master this way to see about running the adventure for you. But if you keep going and you spoil yourself, you'll be condemned to walking the plank. Okay, keepers, let's get this show on the road. The backstory for this adventure is that centuries ago, the dread pirate Blackteeth Keetes discovered a strange hidden cave with several treasures inside of it. Taking it for themselves, the pirates unwittingly broke an ancient ward designed to hold back a terrible mythos entity from our world. That night, 30-dimensional shamblers appeared on the deck of their ship, transported the pirates to a small underground cave off the coast of Massachusetts, and then snatched away 4 of the crew members. And every night after that, more shamblers arrived, snatching away more crew before they were eventually driven off by swords and musket fire. Mama Flay, a priestess traveling with the crew, realized what was going on and what had happened, and with the help of the remaining survivors, she was able to recreate the original ceremony that kept these creatures and their dark god at bay. However, what she didn't tell the pirate crew is that in doing so, all of them were doomed. The island was pulled into sort of a pocket dimension, and she turned the crew into zombies that would wander around this island in order to protect the warding statues. She killed Captain Keetes and used his skull to forever light a golden brazier that powered this magic. Now, fast forward to 2 years ago, a fishing boat, the Sweet Mary Jane, was caught in a storm and wrecked upon this invisible island, and in doing so it knocked over one of the perimeter statues that served as the ward, which weakened the ward and caused the island to sort of kind of phase in and out of existence in our world, so local fishermen would occasionally see this, and they started referring to this as the Ghost Island. 1 week ago, famed explorer and friend of the player characters Howard Winchester followed rumors of this ghost island, and he commissioned a ship to go find it. They unwittingly destroyed more of the ward statues, releasing the dimensional shamblers. Howard tried to escape but failed. However, his damaged boat and his effects were later discovered by a fisherman, and upon reading all of that, he sent a telegram off to the heroes, thus starting the adventure. Okay, couple things here. First, I don't know why the cult set up their statues in the first place that have an aquatic look to them. When you read the description of them, they're kind of just described looking like Cthulhu statues with their little tentacled faces, but they're done in a South American style, kind of like the Tiwanaku Empire had done them. But there is no relationship to Cthulhu, Dagon, the Star Spawn, or any of that stuff in this adventure, so I suggest that you just go ahead and cut that part of the description out. Not everything needs to be about Cthulhu here. So I say that you make these statues look more like dimensional shamblers, kind of like bug-like gorilla things, and done in the style of the South American Empire, which they were from the western side of South America, not the Caribbean side. So you can change Blackteeth Keetes' territory to being somewhere around Peru than being in the Caribbean. Next, I don't know why the Shamblers teleported the ship to the island cave in the first place. That's not explained at all. So for my game, I had the explanation be that Mama Flay did it because she was trying to get the crew to somewhere safe and isolated in order to recreate the wards. Finally, there's no particular reason why the island has to be set off the coast of Massachusetts. So depending on your campaign and where your campaign is located, you can place the island anywhere in the world that you want. Anyway, the adventure opens up and one of the characters gets a telegram from Captain Cobb in Kingsport. For this, I made a telegram handout for my players. Now, because this one is addressed to one of our PCs and is in Arkham, it's not going to be that useful for any of you to use, so in the video description below, I've added a link to where you can download a generic version with no recipient name and city, as well as just a blank version if you want to make your own telegram if you like.
Holy crap, guys, some dude in Kingsport just told me that our good friend Howard Winchester is in trouble. We gotta get to the bottom of this. We gotta find out what happened. Hold on, Howard. We're coming to save you.
Once the PCs arrive in Kingsport, Captain Cobb will tell them how he discovered a sinking boat that was near the Ghost Island, and inside was a pack with several items: a journal, a letter to one of the player characters, a map, and a strange gold coin. The handouts say how Howard found the ship of the pirate Blackteeth Keetes on the Ghost Island, and about the statues with the gold coins in their foreheads. Cobb can explain the stories of the Ghost Island, how it's only visible at certain times of day and is shrouded in fog. He believes that Winchester might be marooned there. He offers to take the investigators to the island in his crappy fishing boat in exchange for a share of this treasure.
Yeah, I guess that would make sense, since none of us own a boat, or even know how to pilot a boat, or even know where in the hell this Ghost Island is. Yeah, we will definitely consider you for that job. Look, guys, there has got to be a better captain around here somewhere. Somebody that's got a better boat than that hunk of junk is somebody that knows what dental hygiene is.
Now, the PCs can, of course, go around and research and see if anybody else is willing to take them. Now, none of the other captains in Kingsport are going to be willing to take them to the island, but they can gather some rumors about the island's recent appearance over the last 2 years. In the library, they can locate the island's position if they compare recent coastal maps to coastal maps that were from over 200 years ago, because the old ones show an island that's no longer on any of the more recent ones, being from the last 200 years. They can also find some information about Blackteeth Keetes. Now, for my game, because I made a few modifications to Keetes' ship, I changed the handout to reflect that. Again, I put a link below to my version of this handout if you want to employ the same changes that I did.
Now for our game, one of our player characters was a rich explorer that lived on his yacht, so we didn't need to hitch a ride with Cobb because we already had a boat and a really good captain. And if that's your situation, then great, you ain't got to use him. But if none of your player characters happen to have a boat or even know how to pilot a boat, then you got Cobb right there that you can easily use.
Reaching the island, the player characters will see the pebble beach where they can land. If they use Cobb to get there, he's going to drop them off and then he's going to wait offshore in his boat until the player characters signal him. Keepers get their own map of this island showing where all the important details are. Now, for my game, I decided that the magic that hid this island from the outside world meant that the island could only be reached from a very precise path. Otherwise, you were kind of going to bend and go around it. Otherwise, if it was just simply an invisible ship, ships sort of run aground of it all the time because, they were it's such a busy shipping lane outside of Massachusetts. So I had it to be where it kind of warped space and time around it. So ships just kind of went around it, not realizing that there was even an island there in the first place, unless they approached it from a very, very specific path. So there were cases of ships that had hit this island. So one of which being the Sweet Mary Jane. So one of the things that I added was several different kind of rusting and crashed and wrecked ships that actually actually had hit this island and run aground of the rocks. Maybe their passengers drowned during that, or maybe they got aboard the island and then were killed off by the pirate zombies once they made it ashore. I just like the idea that, once they get to the island, it's surrounded by, several ominous shipwrecks.
And that ain't a problem unless you happen to have the type of players that are willing to risk those rocks in order to search those rotted and half-recognizable hulks just because they're worried that there might be something that's important on one of them, and they are completely unable to tell that that's really just background scenery that you added, which means that they're just going to delay even longer getting onto that island and getting to the adventure.
Yeah, that's a possibility too. The island itself is silent, devoid of all animal or insect life. The module gives us some great descriptors that we can use here. Pulling from non-visual senses, I love this. It's a fantastic tool to help game masters give a sense of immersion, and not enough printed adventures do this simple thing like that. The island south portion is pretty straightforward. Following the map, they'll discover Howard's camp. They'll find one of the statues, a gold brazier, and a blackened skull, once belonging to Blackteeth Keetes.
Well, it appears that Howard ain't here, but what is up with that weird little statue? It looks like that coin that we found might fit into its forehead, and... do you guys hear that?
After a buzzing, droning noise, a dimensional shambler appears, trying to pull one of the investigators into an alternate dimension. If it succeeds, the player character finds themselves in kind of these weird woods that are similar to the ones that they just left, but are now littered with all these dead pirates everywhere.
Where in the hell am I? And Howard, buddy, oh my God, we've been looking all over for you, and you were looking a bit rough there, pal. I was wondering if you might know a way out of what the hell is that thing?
In the sky, a jellyfish-looking entity floats, slowly draining the life force from all who were brought into its realm. Winchester shouts how the player characters must get to the ship and must find her, and then he manages to push the investigator back out into the regular world. Now, if the player characters, when they face off against this dimensional shambler, manage to kill the shambler before the shambler is able to grab somebody and yank them into this alternate world where they can then, see what's going on and meet Howard and kind of get their quest from Howard. So if they manage to kill it, once the dimensional shambler falls and dies, it kind of begins fading back out of this reality. This rift opens up in the reality, this sort of tear, and through it they can see Winchester and they can see everything going on behind him. And he shouts to them the same thing, how they need to get to the ship and they need to find her because time is running out. Once this vague mission is given to them, the player characters should probably explore the island. The island is populated by zombie pirates, and keepers should throw in a few patrols here and there and close calls in order to liven it up. For my game, I also added a few different elements about it. Like, one of them they saw it had moss and ferns growing out between its ribs. So it was actually just kind of leaning against some rocks, just almost invisible. And then as they got closer, it kind of shuddered and started coming towards them and held up this rusted sword. Just kind of good little atmospheric things showing that not much has happened on this island in the past 200 years. So these zombies, some of them that were just standing still, just kind of nature took over and started covering them up. Now, eventually, the player characters should reach a cave titled Pirate's Cove on their map. Inside, they'll find Keetes' ship, the Black Fin. However, an elaborate network of ropes and lines kind of runs all across this cave, like some sort of elaborate spiderweb sort of thing. And all of these will activate a series of traps. The module gives us some vague instructions on how to use this and this chart to determine which traps the player characters might activate. Personally, I don't like the vagueness of this portion. Also, these traps seem a bit weenie to me. I mean, this is Pulp Cthulhu. We've got beefy heroes here, but the biggest trap only does 2d4, which even at max damage isn't enough to give a serious wound to most Pulp characters. So once they get through the traps, we get to the Black Fin itself, which is a tiny single-masted ship. So for my game, I changed all of this stuff. First, I made a cave map where the player characters would have to navigate the tunnels leading downward, and then I populated that with traps. Now, some of those traps had already been activated, either because somebody else had activated them or because they were just kind of old and broke and activated themselves. Traps, of course, can be bypassed or disabled, and if any of them are set off, the player character is allowed to make a dodge roll to get out of the way of it in time. But these are much beefier in their damage, so they do actually pose a real risk to these pulp characters. For the ship, I took a map from an old TSR pirate ship and I made some modifications to it, showing the flooded decks and some bronze cannons that I added. There were also some iron cannons, but I had where those had just kind of rusted through and were useless, but there were these nice pretty bronze ones that were still sitting on one of the decks. I also added another threat, a guardian creature that Mama Flay had summoned and lives in the water around the ship.
Wait, you added that thing? That monster nearly kicked our asses, and that was something you just threw in because you thought it'd be fun? Yeah, this is why I drink. And where the hell is my flask?
After finding some more shamblers, the player character should discover Mama Flay. Now, she's been in some sort of suspended animation for the past 200 years, kind of watching out over the island, but she wasn't able to wake herself before now. So once the player characters arrive, she's going to come to, and she's going to be able to tell the player characters everything that they did because she had been kind of watching them from this other realm. Now, for my game, one of our player characters is psychic, so she managed to get a message from Mama Flay saying, that you need to get down to the ship and where she was in the ship. So keepers might want to consider something like that. If one of their pulp characters also happens to be psychic, maybe they can kind of have a link with her. Or if one of the player characters might go insane or have a bout of madness, maybe during that madness they can hear the voice of Mama Flay calling to them and telling them where to go. It kind of gives it a little bit more of that supernatural and weird factor if they know that there's some entity there trying to call to them. Now, Mama Flay explains that the wards have to be reset, the statues returned, and all the coins put back in their heads. Now, afterwards, once they've done that, the player characters then return to the center of the island and reignite the golden bowl with Blackteeth Keetes' skull inside of it. Now, at this point, the player characters should have discovered several of the coins. The module describes them as all being slightly different than one another, but it only gives us one image for the coins. So, with a little Photoshop, I made all 5, and then printed that out and cut them out for my players to use as handouts.
And let me tell you that we had a time of it trying to figure out which coin came from which statue's forehead as we're making all these rolls, trying to identify Primarchs and trying to make sure that we got the right one and the right statue at the right orientation, because we were convinced that we were going to screw that thing up and just ruin the whole ceremony. So we were extra careful.
Which coin goes with which statue doesn't really matter. I thought it'd just kind of be fun to mess with my players because they thought that might be important. Mama Flay also gives one of the player characters a magical dagger, and this dagger grants that player character the ability to cast this ceremony and also be able to possibly control some of the zombies that are wandering around the island if they're able to make some POW checks against it. They also get the knowledge that the coin placement inside each individual statue doesn't really matter, so that way they're not wasting your entire game doing that. So I did have kind of a way out after they had spent some time trying to figure it out. They got the dagger and it was like, oh yeah, that didn't matter at all, guys. And with that, Mama Flay dissolves into dust.
Guys, we gotta reseal this gate and stop this Mythos god before it breaks into our world and consumes all life as we know it. But first, let's find us some pirate treasure.
There is a small cache of treasure in the captain's cabin, but that only comes to $500, possibly a little bit more if you sell it to a museum. However, I didn't like that. So many Call of Cthulhu games, never really have a big payout, if any payout at all. And this being a Goonies-style pirate treasure adventure, I decided to up this treasure significantly. So in addition to the stuff that's listed in the module, I added this, which was scattered around the ship. Most of this was down on the flooded portions. I also noted the weight of all of this because gold and silver and bronze cannons can get kinda heavy, as well as notes as what these items might sell for with the appropriate rolls required, such as a combined appraise and persuade check, and this is the amount that you could sell it for if you were successful or how successful. Again, I've put a link down below if anybody wants to have access to these handouts and everything that I made. Now, once the statues and the coins are all back in place, the heroes can begin the ritual at the clearing at the island's heart. The ritual portion I found a bit confusing to read, but it ended up playing out pretty fine. Essentially, there are 2 parts to it. First, the caster must successfully make opposed POW checks 3 times. This will cost some sanity and a minimum of 3 rounds, providing that each of those POW checks was successful. Every round, a new dimensional shambler is going to gate in to stop this. So while the caster is doing their thing, the rest of the party is going to be fighting back these dimensional shamblers. Now, my group also had a squad of these pirate zombies that they kind of managed to amass as they were going around the island. You know, they'd come across a pirate one, they'd do the POW check because one of them had the dagger, be like, join me, and they would join it. And then once they started the ceremony, they'd say, protect us. And so once these dimensional shamblers would appear, this kind of like, little squad of zombies would go charging up to dimensional shambler, usually get their butts kicked, but it's kind of cool that they had down these little minions to help them out during this portion. Now, of course, if your group is very powerful and they might not have felt too challenged with these dimensional shamblers so far, keepers might want to add some additional shamblers for them to fight. So instead of one every round, you might make it, one or two every round, or whatever it is that you think is fair and is most enjoyable. Now, once the first portion is done, the second part is empowering the Elder Sign, which it's a huge Elder Sign. It covers the whole island. Essentially, the caster must spend several minutes focusing each round, which each round for this is 5 minutes long and costs magic points and gives us a accumulating 10% chance of success. However, the shamblers are going to be trying to stop this, so every round the player characters are going to have to be making opposed POW checks against these shamblers, trying to banish them and push them back into this other world. Now, this scene is where it got a bit confusing for us because the more shamblers that are still around at the end of each round, the more magic points that the caster must spend in order to do this ceremony. Some of the characters went insane during all of this. The caster ran out of magic points, so now it's tapping into his hit points as blood begins seeping out of him as he's trying to cast this spell. It was seriously intense. But keepers, before you start this scene, I recommend that you make sure that all your players fully understand what all it is that they have to do here. Because this doesn't really follow the normal rules to a Call of Cthulhu combat, your players can get confused as far as what successes and failures actually mean, and that might slow the game down as they keep asking you what all they're trying to do and why they're trying to do it. So make sure that before it starts, the person that's got the dagger can explain to everybody else what they gotta do. Now, once the caster feels that they've got a good enough chance, which once again it's a 10% for every 5-minute round that they spent concentrating on this, once they feel that they've got enough good chance and they're ready to release the spell, the caster rolls. Now, the module lists 3 possible results. Success, or if they fail, then push that roll and then fail the pushed roll, they must sacrifice somebody. Possibly Howard, who they came all the way here to save, but if they sacrifice somebody, then that's going to solve their problem and complete the ritual. Or total failure and the world is screwed. Now, once the ritual completes, providing the ritual is successful, the player characters can go ahead and leave this island, which is can return to a sort of here but not here state sort of pocket dimension. Now, I say that the caster of the ceremony should always be able to return to the island. They always know the correct path in order to get back here, meaning that they've got free access to it whenever they like. And I think that'd kind of make for kind of a cool home base, kind of a secret base sort of thing like that, since this is a pulp game, and if you've got a good pulp hero, they should be able to have kind of a secret lair somewhere, and an island that nobody else can reach is a pretty damn good location for a secret lair. Overall, I had a lot of fun with this adventure. It was a short but action-packed scenario, and the changes that I made to it were more out of personal preference or something that I did just to enhance it, rather than there were changes that I made because I was trying to correct some sort of problem with it. So I like the fact that any effort that I put into it was really just making a good thing better rather than trying to fix something that was wrong. I always enjoy seeing a lot of pulp adventures. I wish there were more of them out there, and this one did not disappoint us. And yes, while it could be done with 7th edition Call of Cthulhu, just regular Call of Cthulhu, I believe that 30-dimensional shamblers and all the pirate zombies might be a bit too much for that one, so you'd have to seriously tone it down in order to make it playable if you wanted to use regular Call of Cthulhu with it, and at that point, you just toned it down so much that it's kind of lost most, if not all of its punch, so I recommend that you only use this adventure with Pulp Cthulhu. You can find the adventure in DriveThruRPG. It is less than $3. I suggest that any Pulp Cthulhu keepers out there should check it out.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews, or how-tos, or RPG philosophy, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, heroes, you have a great day. With Mama Flay vanishing the way that she did, I think what that means is by her passing the dagger to the player character, that player character became the new guardian of the island, and she was no longer needed anymore. So now this player character, they got some sort of, psychic connection to this island, like they're in tune to it somehow, and maybe they gotta return to it periodically in order to refresh themselves. But maybe, as long as they're on that island, they're immortal. They don't age, they don't need to eat or nothing like that. But whenever they leave that island to go do their adventures or whatever else it is that they want to do, they understand that they're kind of putting the whole world at risk, because if something happens to them, then nobody's going to be protecting that gate, and that monster might get through and destroy the world. So they're going to have to make arrangements in order for there to be an heir to the dagger in case something happens to them. Also, once they return to that island periodically, to refresh themselves or whatever the hell it is, maybe there's a small but growing chance that they might be overcome with the urge just to close their eyes and enter that suspended animation state in order to become the eternal guardian of the island, right? Maybe if they go insane, they're not going to be able to deny that any further. They're just going to go there and enter that non-death state, kind of enter the astral realm to look down upon everything, and their player characters are never going to speak to them again. I think that'd be a pretty cool way to retire a player character.